You know, it's a nice day outside here in Philadelphia, sitting here with Derek Bodner and Brianna, and I just feel like I can get 1% better as we get ready for the start of the season, especially, Derek, on an anniversary day. 1 year ago today, the PHLY network, of course, under the umbrella of ALLCITY, got underway, and it is year number 1 in the books for the family. And man, this is awesome to be following what went on today, from John Marks to Anthony Gargano, two huge names in our area, as we know, in the sports media landscape. Then you move on to the Phillies, Flyers, Eagle shows, and following up with us here at 3 p.m., starting with the PHLY Sixers podcast. And although I was not there for the start of the launch here at PHLY, it's pretty cool to be 1 year in with this whole network, and with you, Kyle, and of course, Bree.
It is. And it is cool to have you. I will say, as much grief as we jokingly grieve, as we give you for having a 3-month vacation at the start of our company, we were all very much looking forward to having you back in the fold and getting a chance to work with you. And after 9 months now of working with you, I think that kind of praise was well deserved. You mentioned that you were trying to get 1% better. Buddy, you are like Shawshank levels. You're already at perfection. You don't need to worry about that. Let the rest of us try to get up to your level.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. As Derek says that, I know how he works. I know how hard he is on himself with certain things. Same thing with Bree and Kyle as well. And they know, although we've worked around each other and we've been apart from each other when we have worked, this is really the first time that we get to see the work ethic on a daily basis over and over and over again. And the one thing that I can say is we made the right decision and teaming up and being able to come here and do this show, put the show on. And this has been fantastic. It's been fun. And can't wait to keep going for a whole nother year, man, as we have a lot to talk about, especially with this basketball team that will give us a ton of things to discuss in year number 2.
Yeah. No, and I'm looking forward to the season getting back, obviously.
By the way, I get to be here for the start of the season.
You will. That will be nice. Again, it'll be nice for you to finally get off the couch and join the company at the start of the season.
Except
We're
for
looking forward to that.
Chairs are very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Yes.
It's probably better than a couch.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a lot coming up in terms of written content. It will be fun watching this company grow. Like you mentioned, at this time last year, we didn't have John or Anthony on the airwaves, so to speak. So it's been growing. I think it's been evolving, and I'm really looking forward to see how it evolves over the next 12 months as well.
Yep, absolutely, man. So as I thank Derek and Kyle, who is out today, and you can check out Kyle's Twitter account. He mentioned why he has not been here. One thing you'll learn about us is we'll make fun of each other, but we always have each other's back. So even though we said Kyle was not going to be here, we just simply said he has some things to do and take some time off like we all do before the start of the season. But he explained why a little bit more on his social media, so you can go check that out at his Twitter account at Kyle Newbeck to see exactly what he had to say. But with Kyle and Derek and Bree, we couldn't do it without you. So as we thank each other and all, we thank you for making this possible. Whether you're a diehard member or not, make sure you go sign up to become a diehard member. It's very easy, because when you do have that written content that Derek is talking about at allphly.com, it's the only way you get to go check it out. By the way, did you see that damn line for Mishkov earlier today that Charlie O'Connor put out there on his Twitter account? Charlie opened it up today and left the article for everybody. He said, this is on me. So if you want that type of content, though, on a daily basis, go sign up to become a diehard member so you can take full advantage of being just that and getting the written content, especially when training camp starts for the Flyers. Training camp starts for the Sixers. Derek and Kyle will have a lot of things written. Rich Hoffman, I'm sure, will chip in with some written content as well, as he likes to do, and certainly so many more with, as we talk about Zach and Bo and Fran, Charlie, Jim Salisbury, Les Bowen. We got you covered, folks. So again, thank you. Congrats to you all for making this possible, as well as we have this 1 year anniversary today. PHLY's Sports was launched. Now, as we talk about getting 1% better, we do that because of Tyrese Maxey and what he always says, since he's been here from the very beginning, always looking to get 1% better as a basketball player. How much better can he get as a person? Because we always point out how great he is as a person. So 1% better, we've seen him improve. So we've talked so much about him and what he needs to do. So we really don't need to gloss over him and what he needs to do. But Derek had a great idea of talking about everybody on this roster, even the new players that we've seen from afar and what they are coming in here to bring to the table for this organization, for this highly anticipated season of this group that they've put together that is loaded. You can argue other teams and how much they fare and match up against them and how loaded they are. But this basketball team is definitely put together really well. They are loaded, but they do have to do certain things and sacrifice certain things to be better in order for this group to reach the levels that we believe, that we know they believe within that building and how good they could be. So as we start things off, we want to talk about the individual players, highlight a few things, and we have not talked about the things that we feel that they could get 1% better at as individual players to make things work for this group. So as we run them off, Derek, you choose the first one that you want to talk about. I'll follow your lead on that one, and then we'll just go back and forth on some of these names with the Philadelphia 76ers. How do you want to do Maxey and Embiid? Because we talk about them so much. Do you want to add them into it, or you want to leave them out?
I mean, we should probably at least bring them up. But I feel like, here's what I'll say. I'll group them together because my improvement for both of them is the same. And it's passing. Because there's such an onus and so much responsibility on your top two players. If they can be elite passers and really use the attention they receive as high-level scorers, as threats to create shots for their teammates, it just makes everyone's job up and down the roster so much easier. And they both draw so much attention. And Joel Embiid, obviously, every time he catches the ball, he's double and triple teamed. But Tyrese Maxey, when he comes off of a screen with Embiid, because he's such a threat to shoot and because Embiid is such a threat as a sort of short roll kind of guy, that pairing draws a lot of attention. If you are high-level passers and really creative passers, it makes everything flow so much smoother. And part of that isn't just creativity and isn't just, the timing on your pass and the accuracy. It's also how long it takes you to get into it. And if I was going to pick one thing with Embiid, it would be quicker decision-making with those passes. But for both of them, it's some variation of passing. And obviously, there's other things you could go to. I would love to see Tyrese get the free throw line a little more. He still seems like he struggles to find that balance between being aggressive and hunting his shot, then also trying to draw contact and get the line. I would love to see Joel Embiid come in much better shape. And I sort of cross that one off the list because I think we're talking more skill set improvements, not, preparation improvements. So if I'm going skill set, for me, it's with both of them. It is with passing.
Obviously, I agree with you on both of them. You kind of stole the one with Joel Embiid, but I'll add on to it as one for me with Joel Embiid, the decision-making, because we did, playing off of what we saw with the Olympic team, seeing as the games went on, especially in the group play where he got so much better as the games went along, his decision-making, not second-guessing himself, not taking too long and forcing himself to cause those turnovers, that's something that needs to translate back here to Philadelphia. Now, while you have a group of players that are from top to bottom, all NBA, all-star level players, you only have two others on this roster where you see Joel Embiid, plus him, of course, with Tyrese Maxey, Paul George now in the mix, where he can trust those two. He can trust Oubre a little bit. Still up in the air at times, but he can trust him because he knows who he is. The same thing, he trusts Kyle Lowry, but he needs to trust everyone else that's out there on the floor. So the decision-making quicker is going to be very important for him, for their success on the offensive end, to make sure the ball is not stagnant, where he's making those defensive players scramble a little bit, because as they're committing, and he's like, okay, cool, you're going to decide, you're going to hedge, and then bang, they come over and try to force that hard double team on him. He's getting rid of that basketball quickly, and now they're trying to figure out what they need to do to recover and get back and find a man on the defensive end. That stuff is going to go a long way for this basketball team if he makes those quick decisions. For Tyrese Maxey, just being decisive. Just continue to be a decisive player, continue to be on the attack, and even with, and he's had this already, with James Harden in the mix, do not defer. If you have it going and you feel like you have that hot hand, Joel Embiid has called him out so many times of stop giving me the basketball and just go. Remember when we saw that lasting image of Kevin Durant getting the basketball, but Steph Curry had already hit 3 3-pointers. He got that ball and threw it right back no matter what the defense looked like, because he had the hot hand, and Steph Curry knew exactly what he wanted to do also in resetting be decisive. And if you have the hot hand, take advantage of the matchup in front of you. And that's the one that I want to see from Tyrese Maxey as we start off with those two, getting 1% better of individual things that will help out the team overall.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You want to move on to the other of the big three?
Let's go with the big three. Paul George.
You get, since I stole your thunder on the first two, you have first crack at Paul George.
Yes. So here's my one thing about the 1% better. This is being the teammate. This is being a team player. The question was posed to him on his show by Chet Holmgren. If Nick Nurse draws up the play at the end to get a game-winning shot, who is going to take that shot? You or Embiid? Didn't mention Tyrese Maxey. Here's the thing that I need Paul George to know coming in here is that he is the other option. While I want him to take all the shots that are there for him, attack those defensive matchups that he's going to have that are going to be favorable, we think, in individual matchups and maybe not so many double teams, to know his place on this basketball team. And it's not just to hand the ball to Tyrese Maxey and hand the ball to Joel Embiid and why you are the third option. It's still to go out there and be the all-star player that you were signed here to be on a 4-year, $200+ million contract. So while you are coming in here to be the third option, as I mentioned, know your role on this team. Your role on this team is also to go out there and be a killer. Go out there 1% better every day and continue to be the killer, not the deferring way that I'm talking about with Maxey, but understanding while you are in the pecking order of Embiid, Maxey, in my opinion, sitting here next to Derek Bodner, who hear his thoughts, Paul George, go out there and still to be that killer and knowing that you have a chance to advance further in your career that maybe you haven't been with this group of players that you decided to sign up with and make that push at the stage of your career, the back end of your career. This is probably your best chance to do it, to go in there. And I'm talking overall, not just one particular piece of what he does on the floor, but more so don't sit there and just be there. Yeah. I need you to be there in every sense of the word as that 22, 24 point per game player, where you are that all-around guy that continues to do those things. That's going to be so important because if these other two are going off, you're just going to be able to conserve a lot of energy, whether it's on the defensive end or even the offensive end when it is your turn to go out there and just flat out cook. So continue, for me, to be that killer because too many times we've seen from afar, while we've credited him for his Oklahoma City run in the postseason, and I've given him credit for that Phoenix Suns run that Derek and I always bring up in 2021 against the Phoenix Suns while he was a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. Too many times we've seen him take too much of a step back. You still need to be that killer while knowing your role of being the third option, most likely, to still have that killer mentality out there on the floor.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. In large part, I think that's true for his career. I am going to go a slightly different direction from that because when I look at Paul George and say, all right, he's 34 now. What's the difference between him at 34 and 29? I do think like the isolation scoring is one of those differences. Point of attack defense as well, but specifically offensively, I don't think he gets by guys as easily as he did 5 years ago. I think it's one spot where you're starting to see like, yeah, he is 34 and it's taking an impact on him. And because of that, like the dribble can get a little sloppy. I want to see him, okay, you're 34. You're going to be here at 35, 36, 37, having to play off of Joel Embiid, having to play off of Tyrese Maxey. I want him to find ways to do more off ball. He's obviously an elite shooter and a very good an elite, basically catch and shoot shooter, but like cutting, running off of screens, finding a way to make an imprint even when your shot isn't falling. He can do that, but I do think he's going to be, aging out of his physical prime. I think some of that isolation and even pick and roll scoring is going to be a casualty of that. He's obviously got an elite shot that he can get off at almost any time. I want him to find ways where he's not fully reliant on that. Not only, again, so much this year, but at 35, 36, 37. So I would just like to see him find ways to play. He's never really been much of an off-ball cutter. I'd love to see him find a way to do like a back cut and really integrate what Kelly Oubre found early in last season into his game. Like I said, not just because of this year, because I think like this year he's going to be a very capable third option. He's going to have mismatches where he can attack and go downhill. But I want to find examples of how he's going to age through the rest of his contract. And I think finding ways to, like I said, back cut, maybe do a little bit more running off of screens, that sort of thing. I would like to see him take that into his game.
Run off of screens in the way that we saw Seth Curry, J.J. Redick, that type of.
I don't expect him to all of a sudden become those players.
No. I just mean those types of sets. Yeah, that's those actions. And look, his body type, his frame, his movement. I mean, we all nerd out here, so we talk about certain things. But his movement and the type of guy that he is, I think he has plenty of that in him in terms of his movement.
He definitely moves better on the perimeter, like running off screens on the perimeter. The cutting stuff, like the Kelly Oubre early season stuff, I think is something that he's largely, I don't want to say ignored, but never really incorporated to that degree. Playing off of Embiid and Maxey, I think there's going to be more avenues for him to find that.
And the one thing that we all know, watching the game, you tend to do those things a lot more when you also know you're going to be rewarded and found when you find yourself wide open.
It's a lot easier to cut when it's Jokic passing to you.
And you know the ball is going to find you at some point. So that's where we talk about Derek's first point of both Maxey and Embiid. Their passing has to be on point. They have to be on point to make sure that they find those open cutters, those players, to get those spots, find those gaps in the defense, to take advantage of those, whether it's a little floater that Paul George is equipped to making right there, as we know, baseline, finish at the rim, dunks, get to the free throw line, knock those down. Those would be fantastic. And I'll add this too. Run, man. Just run. Defense, get out there and run, because not only can he fill the lane on the outsides, he can be a trail man and pull up three-pointer, but he can also be the one generating things from the middle of the floor. When you have Caleb Martin on one side, you have Kelly Oubre on the other side pushing the break. Tyrese Maxey may be a trail man or one that's going to find that spot around the three-point line where he can spot up and maybe cause a threat that then opens up something where you and Kyle talk about his passing so much. He's a very good passer. He will find, when we talk about his passing, he will find you in the open floor. If, the no-look pass, if you're looking at Maxey is getting all this attention by finding that spot on the wing for a transition three, Caleb Martin is still cutting on that left side. He's going to find him. So I can't wait to see what that looks like also. Snatching the ball off the rim, getting out in transition. Even if it's Maxey gets the rebound. He sees those guys already moving. Hey, hit the man in the middle, run, get that transition bucket opportunity going, and let Paul George run that break. So that stuff is going to be great. We have so many other players to still dissect and get to. 1% better is what we're talking about. I'm still trying to get 1% better, even though Derek said I don't need to.
Perfection.
I'm trying, and I'm going to do that on the other side with Derek, with Bree, with all of you here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
All right. First up, we want to tell you about Empire Today. Actually, I've got a whole block of home improvement coming to you, which is perfect because I am disorganized when it comes to home repair stuff, frankly, a little bit lazy and borderline incompetent, which means I need a lot of help in that regard. And if you're like me and something that comes up is flooring, Empire Today is where you're going to want to turn. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today keeps shopping for floor simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. And Empire Today has a virtual floor designer, which is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They also service their own warranties. So with Empire Today, you won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use a promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details. Also want to make sure we tell you about Ace Hardware Home Services. At Ace Hardware Home Services, whenever they get ready for the next job, they remember what to bring. They bring experience, local plumbing, and techs that handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installations and upgrades. They bring understanding. They listen to your goals, and the job isn't completed until you're satisfied. And they bring helpful to your home. So when you spend more time of your time in projects that really matter. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project.
All right, welcome back. Let me ask you, 1 year anniversary. What's something that stands out for you with this 1 year anniversary of PHLY Sixers in particular overall?
Talking about like what we need to
just something that
forward
a
to?
fun time that has happened in from last September to where we are
buddy,
right now.
That's an easy one.
What's that?
Like when we're sitting there at the Sphere in tie-dye, like that was not something I had on my bingo card at all. Not at all.
That was a good one. That's a good one. So it's been 9 months for me. I'll say that the competitiveness that I found. See, I already knew about Derek because we've played in other basketball things that Sixers would in the past had these media games that we would participate in, and it would get really competitive with some people. And I had found out that Derek was one of them. And you never know how guys play basketball, or we talk about it and can they play? So you kind of eyeing them and trying to see what it is. And I was like, oh, Derek can play some basketball. But the competitiveness that I find out since from both he and Kyle when it comes to our Papa
And
Shot.
we're talking mostly about Papa Shot.
Yeah.
Here. I don't know if we really saw this until that dang thing entered the studio.
Well, I saw it briefly because Kyle, even in just regular stuff, Kyle's competitive as hell in these things. But when we got the Papa Shot put in the office, I found out. So that's one thing that I find out from year one overall that I was like, okay, cool. Now I know what I'm working with these two guys, these maniacs when it comes to the competitive nature.
I would say I'm a little bit selectively, competitive. Like I don't need to win everything.
Yeah.
And I let a lot of things go. But when I find one thing, I'm like, no, I can't let Kyle run a 130 and me be 13 points behind. Like I've got to close that gap. So it really depends. I think Kyle's probably a little more competitive on everything he does.
Everything.
Whereas I'm a little bit more selectively competitive. But once you wind me up, I'm good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy anniversary, everybody out there. Again, year one of PHLY Sports. Great to be here. And we thank you, of course, if you have a chance to make sure you watch on Roku TV as well, since Roku, a year in. Who the heck knew that we would be on Roku TV? So make sure you go ahead, check us out. Streaming, as always, on Roku TV, where, Derek, we have a 24/7 Roku channel for PHLY Sports.
I've actually been a big Roku user in the past. I like, of all of those streaming sticks, I think Roku's the best. So I like that.
Yeah,
I like having it up there.
So it's pretty cool.
Any way we can find to reach you where you are, I think is good for
there we
us
are.
To offer.
Roku, streaming on Roku as well as YouTube, as always. All right, next up. Let's go to.
We could flip this on its head and ask the chat to say what we should be 1% better at, but we probably don't need that kind of smoke right now.
You already did it. This is live. You can't pull that back now. Bree can't erase that one. So, folks, might as well tell us what we can be 1% better as well. And while you're in there, tell us what you like about the show and what you would like to see maybe improve on the show as we go along, because we're always looking forward to be better. So, Caleb Martin, let me throw that one at you. 1% better with this particular team.
A lot of these role players, I'm going to try not to be too repetitive, but for almost every one of these role players, get better at making an open catch and shoot three. That's what each and every one of them needs to improve upon. Caleb Martin has been a streaky shooter throughout his career. Obviously, he had that incredible playoff run with the Heat, and he hasn't been a bad shooter, but he's not as consistently good as you would want. And I've brought up before that on open catch and shoot shots, he's had a pretty good percentage. I believe it was above 40% over the last couple of years. Those are admittedly low volume. The optimist would say on a higher volume, because he's getting so much, or because Embiid is receiving so much attention, he's getting more opportunities. Maybe, you can increase that volume. And if that percentage is true, he'll be a much more effective overall 3-point shooter when he's not relying on, creating as much for himself. The pessimist would look at, well, you can't really look at those numbers because it's so low volume. But for every one of those, and again, I'm going to try not to, but it's hard to get around it with someone like Kelly. For almost every one of these players, that catch and shoot shot, like if he can be elite, and I wrote about this the other day at allphly.com, but one of the keys to trying to survive the minutes without Joel Embiid is, can you put, and we had a podcast on this earlier in the week, can you put some of your bigger wings on there to remain competitive, or are you going to have to turn to Reggie Jackson or Kyle Lowry alongside of Tyrese Maxey to get more ball handling? Well, if your big wings can make a shot, it just makes that all so much easier. So for Martin, it is going to be, for me, a catch and shoot shot, even though it's boring to talk about.
So, see, this is why we're here together, because we're thinking the same along the lines. Mine is more the overall well-rounded. It's probably asking too much of him to show us a little bit more of what we saw in that 23 playoff series against the Boston Celtics.
Sure.
But whatever the confidence was that was there, to your point about the shooting, the catch and shoot shooting, because you know you're going to get some really good open looks, especially in the starting role. And it's funny because Money Mara says in the chat, Caleb Martin should be coming off the bench. He can't come from being demoted by the Heat to starting for the 76ers. The only difference is there's a lot different roster construction when you're looking at the starting five with 3 All-Stars versus 2, what they have there, and how things are probably going to flow here. And that's why it makes more sense here with him starting than in Miami, Money Mart, in my opinion, because of who he's playing around with. Less of a problem there with the things that he's doing. Plus his defense is more of what they're really looking at in that starting role of defending all the wings that they have in the East. And that's just me, Money Mart. That's how I feel when I'm looking at it. But as we talk about that, if you can get the confidence of that guy, not saying that he lost it, because whatever it was, guys just get hot and it happens. But we know he can play. It's how much of that can be in there, especially in those big games, in those series that we talk about, where you're going to need a game from somebody else. Your best player, as I always say, your best player is going to win you 2. Your second best player is going to win you 1. And now that you have that third best player, maybe it's going to be where he wins you 1. But if not, you're going to need a collective effort, and you're probably going to need in 1 or if not 2 of those games for a role player to step up and be huge in a 7-game series. And we've already seen that he can do that. How sustainable is that? I don't know. I lean more towards it's not, because of what we're talking about here. And that is, can he give me a semblance of that on a daily basis, but more particularly in those big games, especially once we get to the postseason, where I don't want to be having the conversation later of, hey, Derek, Kyle, Bree, should we be starting this show off? And our show topic is, should Caleb Martin be taken out of the starting lineup? I need him to make sure that he implements himself and cements himself into being a starter on this basketball team going forward. As good as Eric Gordon's shooting may be, whoever else may be playing so well coming off the bench, I want him to establish himself as that 5th starter, where it's not even a question, should Yabusele be put in the starting lineup at some point during the season. That's what I'm looking at for Caleb Martin. Who you got for me?
I mean, let's just go right to Kelly then. Let's go down the wings.
I need Kelly to just be a more consistent player. On the positive side.
I do prefer those players.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but if I was to pick out one thing as far as the 1% goes, I'm not going to go with the 3-pointer. I'm just going to go with, don't get lost when you don't get the ball. Continue to be that movement player that you brought up about Paul George, because far too many times with the body language where you would see that he would do the right thing and see it opening, find it opening, and do what he needed to do on that movement to get to that open spot, not reward it. Don't show that. Don't let that stop you from getting out there and doing the same thing the very next opportunity down the floor. Paul George is a better player, passer, than Tobias Harris. So, again, he might be rewarded.
Paul George is better at everything than Tobias Harris.
So there you go. Right there. So with it, I just need him to not get discouraged now as that starter on the offensive end. Defensively, of course, he's going to get lost. He's not, as we talk about him being a very good defender now, he's not Herb Jones.
No, he's a good point of attack defender.
Yeah, he's not Herb Jones. So sometimes he's going to get spaced out, and guys going to back cut him. And he's going to be an easy bucket on the other end. I mean, on the spot there where they find that crease there in the defense, and you're going to yell at him for doing so. I need him, though, to offensively not get lost where he is now spaced out on that end because he's not being rewarded. We know he can score, but he's not the 3rd option. He's not the 2nd option. He's going to be the 4th option on this starting unit, where he has to understand that is his role and to not get discouraged of being that player. So that's more of a mental thing than it is anything with Kelly Oubre.
For me, and I agree with you, like his off-ball cut, if there are 2 stories to Kelly Oubre's season last year, it would be the early season off-ball cutting that he found off of Embiid and how bought in he was as a point of attack defender. Now, where I need the improvement to come from, and I'm not going to say just like, make a catch and shoot shot, because I just said that for Martin and I don't want to say that for everyone. What I'll say here instead is the shot selection and the decision making, specifically on those catch and shoot shots. I brought this up before, but he is pretty consistently a 35 to 40% shooter on open catch and shoot shots and a 25 to 30% shooter on contested catch and shoot shots. And there are just so many options now with the Sixers where he will have someone else on the floor where if they have an advantage, they can take advantage, or they have a closeout to attack, they can take advantage of it. If the ball gets swung to you and you're not open, keep it moving. We don't need you throwing up a 27% contested three when there's 10, 15, even more seconds left on the shot clock. To me, so much of his effectiveness, and look, if you look at the back of Kelly's baseball card, he still shot poorly. He was still an inefficient offensive player. So much of that, and I give him a little bit of leeway because I thought he bought in so well defensively that I was impressed. The main avenue between him being an efficient role player and not is that shot selection, is that decision making. He's just got to realize he's not playing for bad teams anymore. He's not playing for the Warriors. He's playing on a team that has a lot of offensive options. If it's not there, keep it moving. You'll get the ball back. The ball will find you if you keep it moving. Just cut out those bad shots that take up too much of his shot diet.
Yep, absolutely. Kelly Oubre, man, he's an experience. He is absolutely an experience. So, boy, that guy is something else. But the other thing
is, I feel like when I say like bad shot selection for a lot of players, I think they're selfish and they're trying to get. I don't even think that's necessarily Kelly's problem. I think he just got caught into some bad habits and has maybe a tiny more confidence in himself than he should.
That's what I was saying. He's very confident. Yeah. This goes back to his Kansas days. This goes to his days in Washington and certainly his days in Phoenix. And then when you go to a bad team like Charlotte, you're like, yo, I'm the best player on this team. Yeah. I don't care who's in front of me. Yep. I know what I'm looking at. I know I can cook this guy on my own team, and I can do that. Coming in here and then having that chip on the shoulder about being on a minimum deal late in the process. But I think this too, Derek, having the team that he was brought in here to play with last season, the front office, loving Nick Nurse the way he professes himself to do, he's back and it got done very quickly. I would have to feel like he feels really good of his spot and his place on this team and knowing that he was wanted.
Yeah.
That's half the battle right there. You know you're wanted. And then there's a possibility of you being able to win. I think you're going to get the best. We're going to have our nights. It's 82 games. Kelly Oubre is going to drive us nuts in probably a good 30-something of those of what he's going to do. But it has to feel good to know that for him, that he is back. And I'm sure that's something that we'll talk about to him at Media Day. And, of course, as training camp goes along, of just the fact of just being wanted.
Yeah. No, especially coming off of that minimum contract. For
Absolutely.
Sure.
Let's squeeze in one more because we might as well knock in 3 while we're here. Get 3 in each segment. And let's go to Eric Gordon.
With 14 players on a roster, we're going to have a lot of segments. We got to pick up the pace, I think.
That's why we said.
Or maybe it's another show. Who knows? We'll see.
You never know. Let's go to Eric Gordon.
He's tough because he's at the age now. What is he, 35?
Where he's just who he is.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can really project.
See, that's why we bring it up now. You said we rolled through these? It's not a lot to really add to Eric Gordon. Knock down your shots, man. I mean, we don't have to get cute with that.
Been his role for a long time.
Just knock down your shots.
But yeah, if he can make a few more, and look, he's gonna take some difficult ones. He's gonna take some from 30 feet, some long bombs. He's gonna be a bomber. It's shooting, sure.
Is there a concern of knowing that, hey, when you come in here and you sign the contract that you do, Nick, obviously from your Houston days, your relationship with Daryl Morey, that was signed pretty quickly. He got a 2-year deal?
Yeah, 2-year minimum.
As the guys have pointed out, he's going to play minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a concern there for you again?
100%. Anytime. And look, he's 35 going on 36. He'll be 36. Actually, Christmas. He was born on Christmas Day. Yeah, there's always a concern that he will play too many minutes. And part of his, it's hard to shoot when your legs are dead. And when you're 36 trying to play big minutes, legs tend to go a little quicker. Ask me how I know. So you want to, I think, not limit his minutes, but keep him fresh. And that's probably as much on Nick Nurse as it is anyone else. But part of that is like he's got to realize he's 35 going on 36. Conserve when you can because so much of his value is tied to that shot. And I don't want to see him coming up short on that because he's overused.
Over under, he's the role player of the game where he wins you a game throughout the 82-game season. Let's say he plays 72 of them. Over under, how many games does he actually, we're highlighting him as the player of the game?
Oh, player of the game?
Outside of course. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when we look back at his Phoenix, we ran some numbers where he had 28, 26, hit 7 threes. Yep. Those types of games. How many of those games do you see over under for Eric Gordon this year?
Probably 2 or 3. I don't think I'm not going to go
fair.
too
so
big.
Over under
most
4.5 over under at an 82-game season of Eric Gordon going berserk and showing the old Eric Gordon.
And part of it is that, like I said, I do want to see him. Like, he was at his peak playing 32, 33, 34 minutes. Last couple of years, he's been in the 20s. I'd like to see him in the 20 to 25 minute per game role just to keep him fresh, just to keep him at his best. And because of that, he's probably not going to put up some of the numbers that he maybe did in the past. Is he okay with that? Is he willing to buy into that? Maybe that's the 1% better, being willing to buy into that kind of a role, even though I think he has over the last couple of years adjusted a little bit. But
20 to 25.
Yeah. Probably closer
18
to
23.
Probably, yeah.
I'm
not sure he signed here to play 23.
I know, but
certainly not signed here to play 18.
No, but there's just so many players, man.
There's a lot of players.
There's so many. All right, when we come back, we'll keep these names going 1% better as we keep it going here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. And as we talk about, I want to get 1% better when it comes to my finances. Make sure that I'm doing right by my finances. I have my kids, right? I want to make sure they're good and having their money situated. And I do that with our great friends from TrueMark Financial, and especially when it comes to those credit cards, the Rewards Visa credit card from TrueMark Financial. Earn rewards for each purchase using TrueMark Financial's Rewards Visa credit card and redeem those travel and retail gift cards as well. We're getting ready to go to the Bahamas. Maybe we need one of those as we travel for a training camp.
Yeah, we do.
Build your credit through timely payments and low credit utilization, whether you're getting your gas, buying your groceries, getting ready for the holiday and using that particular card to get those things for your loved ones. TrueMark Financial is the one for you. You also enjoy fraud protection with features with like zero liability. The traditional savings account, I have to tell you about that also. Basic savings account offering a place to deposit funds, earn interest, and withdraw money as needed. Money market account combine features of savings and checking accounts offering higher interest rates and limited check writing capabilities. Easy access to your money when you need it most. Certificates as well, fixed term deposit account with predetermined interest rate maturity date, offering higher interest rates for locking in funds for a specific period. That's what you get with TrueMark Financial. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, not just from us, visit truemark.com/PHLY. Also, I have to tell you about, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but
ourselves
here at the PHLY family. 1 year anniversary. Diehards are already there. More diehards to come. Tell your friend to tell another friend to tell another friend that all that you get from being a diehard member, signing up, allphly.com. The great stories again written about the Sixers from Kyle and Derek. Charlie O'Connor, all the Michkov hype that's going on, the mania right now as they're getting ready for, what is it there, rookie camp and all that stuff that's going on right now for the Flyers. Charlie is telling you all about it. The Eagles have a big game on Monday night. You know the team with PHLY. Eagles has you covered, and we're getting ready for the baseball team is right back in first place in the NL. We were like, getting a little worried. We told you not to worry.
Oh, I tried to tell you not to worry. I'm not sure how successful because baseball season is so long.
It's so long.
I can sit here and say there's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be peaks and valleys. What's happening now doesn't matter.
Yep.
Does it drive me neurotic? Yes, it still does. I can have that. Yeah, baseball's too long.
But you know how it is. You get the great written content from Jim Salisbury, the great show from Renee, Tyler, and Jamie on the PHLY Phillies podcast, as well as the team is trying to lock in. I think I heard the magic number was 9 to lock in the NL crown in the East. So that is great as well. So make sure, sign up to become a diehard member. And we do have an event coming up for the Monday night game at home opener, the real home opener in South Philly. And that is against the Falcons, the official tailgate party for PHLY Eagles. That's going to be with Jamie and Roy, I believe. And that is going to be again, one that's a huge one, already put out there on our social account. Going to be at Uptown Beer Garden for the Monday night tailgate beginning from 5 to 8. Make sure you register at allphly.com/events and sign up there for Miller Lite specials. And when you do so, it's free RSVP to get into the event. And when we saw the photos, I was not there.
Shame on you.
You were there.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It was fun.
Saw the photos. Look packed.
Solid food, packed house. Great to meet a bunch of, put a bunch of faces to names that we see in the Discord and the chat. Looking forward to going here again Monday.
I saw one that Vince had put in our Slack channel here that it was packed. You said solid
packed,
food, great bartenders, meeting the diehards, and of course cheering on the team was a blast. City overall was electric on that Friday night.
A little nervous early on,
of
but
course.
electric.
Yeah, I mean, just ridiculous turnovers by Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Can't be throwing that. Can't throw in the middle of the field like that across your body.
He got away with the throw right before then too.
Yeah.
He had a couple bad decisions.
He should have
in a
had
row.
3 interceptions in that game. Yeah, and then the one that he threw. Well, then we'll get back to the players, right? The one that he threw in the end zone, the AJ Brown, that interception. I saw what he saw, but you can't think that you can fit that in 3 seconds later.
Yeah,
you got to let that thing go right there.
Yep.
And that was probably a touchdown.
No, it's one thing to just have bad passes, but he had way too many bad decisions in that game. Just way too many.
You think he gets back to that MVP level form? Top 7 quarterback form?
You know what? I'm going to choose optimism today.
I
don't know if I feel optimism, but I'm going to choose optimism.
I think he does. But make sure you sign up to become a diehard member here as we talk about our 1-year anniversary once again. All right, we got to get to some more players, man. Who you got? I mentioned Eric Gordon before we went to break. Let's throw another one out
let's
there.
go get him.
Go get him, Rick.
Go get him.
You know what I need to see? First of all, Nick Nurse, give him some minutes. Need to see that first. Need to see him defensively, 1% better. Earn your spot on the floor defensively. Where we talk about sometimes you could see you get caught looking somewhere in one spot with Kelly Oubre. As much as we praise Ricky, he was a rookie, an undrafted one at that. He earned his minutes at that point. Make sure defensively that every time you're out there, balls to the wall.
Yep.
Just like you did. Under control, but balls to the wall, because you know if you're able to get out there and do that, when we talk about filling those lanes in transition, I would like to see him, Derek, out there with Paul George sometimes, because he's playing with a much better player on the wing defensively, where you know that the information that is being given from that Hall of Famer that he's sharing with him, he's just going to tell him every time of what to do to get better. So if I could see him 1% better defensively this year than he was last year, earning those minutes, and then on the other side, those things just translate from the confidence that you're showing on the defensive end, 1% better defensively for Ricky Council to earn those minutes. You hear me, Nick Nurse? 1%. Give him the minutes, man. Yeah. Give him the minutes.
No, and this is again where the right answer is that shot. That shot is the key to unlocking pretty much everything. It's going to struggle for him to get on the floor without it. But it's boring for every role player to say, well, he's got to make more open shots. We know. We freaking know, Derek. Stop. So the second answer to that, and this is something Kyle has hammered home, be so good defensively that it's impossible for Nick Nurse not to play you. And that comes up a lot. Like, he gives a great effort man-to-man, off-ball awareness, knowing when to dig down so that you can still recover, knowing when to, help on a driver and still be able to recover, having your head on a swivel off ball so that you can pay attention to what's going on with the ball without losing your man, calling out, communicating, all of those little things that just takes time for a young player, especially a young undrafted player who's trying to figure out so many different things. Now he's been in the system for a year. He has, knows what he needs to do to get on the court. Obviously, he needs to shoot. And if he doesn't shoot well, real hard to get on the floor. But assuming that shot comes around a little bit, just do all the little things that Nick Nurse is asking you defensively, so it's impossible for Nick not to play you.
Does he have the most, I guess, in terms of the city, outside of Tyrese Maxey and Embiid and Maxey, does he have the most arrow pointing up value when it comes to Sixer fans?
From Sixers fans, sure. He's got a little bit of backup quarterback thing.
Which is interesting.
He barely played. He flashed.
He was undrafted.
Yeah, but
so for him to have that and show just the stuff that he showed him flashing in the short amount of time that he did, that's pretty good.
No, it's pretty good. And he's exciting to watch. Like there's all kinds of reasons. And he just hasn't played enough to where I think we really pick apart his weaknesses. So I do think we tend to swing too much in either direction. Like when young players first come out and they show something that's exciting, we go, fall in love with them. And then you see him play a little bit and you're like, oh, well, he sucks. And we go too far the other way. But I do think that there is something to him where it's very easy to make a projection to where he can be a useful, consistent NBA player. And because of that, he has not only like maybe the most fan support outside of Maxey. Maxey is generational in how much everyone just adores him, which is crazy considering he's this good. Usually when you get to be this good, people are picking you apart to death. But outside of Maxey, he might have the second highest approval rating on this team. But he also has maybe the second or the most area of growth ahead of him as well. And because of that, he's going to be a fun person to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the development with him. Jay says absolutely 100%. Money Mar, Councilman Ricky is there as we Councilman Ricky. Make sure you lock things in for the Center City Arena. All right, let's go to another one. The one who's going to probably battle minutes for Ricky, and that's K.J. Martin. How does he get 1% better?
I mean, he's got to be able to shoot the dang ball. Like just this
done
one,
and
this
done.
one I can't ignore it because like I can come up with something else for
we
Ricky.
Know he can rebound.
Yeah,
we know he's going to defend to his position and even higher. A little bit more. He'll go above and defend the 5.
He really was one of those where you looked at like his early career numbers in Houston and you went, yeah, there's something intriguing there.
It.
Like the numbers look like he can shoot. And then he shot a couple. You're like, oh, yeah, I don't trust that shot at all. He needs to have a reliable jumper. Just period. As a 6'5" power forward / center, like you've got to be able to shoot.
Yeah. And you know what? Not just a 3-pointer. If you get a baseline jumper that's 16 foot, knock it down. Yep. Don't hesitate. Just shoot it. Knock it down. You stay on the floor. And his floater, if he can get that floater going, a la Isaiah Hartenstein, not as efficient because you don't play enough minutes to do that. But we've seen the push shot. Do that too.
Yep.
Do that too. Don't worry about always trying to go into the trees and dunking on people and then doing all of this. And now we're looking at, Anthony Melton all over again here at the rim. But yeah, I agree with you. Don't have much to add there. Who you got?
All right, young guy, new guy, Jared McCain.
For him, he's here to knock down the shots early in his career. So it's hard to, again, damn it, it's hard to ignore. He has to knock down his shots.
You have to be a good shooter to be a role player in the NBA nowadays. You have to.
For him to be so young, where he has to improve so much, the shot creation is not there yet, where he's going to spend so much time with the Delaware Bluecoats and honing that skill and getting better and picking up everything with the offense. With Delaware, he really has to knock down his shots when he's given the opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't think there's, if we want to pick, of course, it is shot creation. Because we talk about his lack of speed, his lack of burst. It's not like Tyrese Maxey or some of the other guards that you look at the point guard position. It's that shot creation along with the ball handling to be a trustworthy point guard and not a combo guard, a point guard on this basketball team that is going to need, quite frankly, at times, some of that ball handling trust from other players, not named Reggie Jackson and Kyle Lowry off the bench.
So I guess my answer to this, it's going to be a little bit against the grain of the nature of the question.
Mm-hmm.
But because he's a rookie, I think it fits. He's just got to take what he was able to do in college and translate that to this environment, to this level of competition.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is a shot and getting adjusted to the further three-point line. Part of that is, I think he was a good team defender in college, especially for a freshman. But in order to get minutes in the NBA, the biggest adjustment you have is learning team concepts. So his goal is just learn those team concepts from Nick Nurse and the staff as quickly as humanly possible so that's not an excuse to keep him off the floor. I do think that shot is going to come around. It might take him a couple of months to adjust to the line and the speed of the game, but I don't think he necessarily has to do anything differently. I think he just has to learn and adjust. For me, it's pick up concepts, pick them up very quickly. And I think he can. I think he's a hard worker who asks all the right questions, is very coachable, yada, yada, yada. I think he was a good team defender in college, but he has such limitations defensively that he has to be exceptional to really get minutes early in his career. So he's got to pick that up.
Martian says McCain is going to lead the league for the rookies in high fives.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, man,
he's the
that's contagious.
Yeah,
he's a guy. Well, it cannot be ignored at how much people talk about, even when they're frustrated. And you have somebody like Tyrese Maxey. James Harden used to say it. Joel Embiid says it. When you come into the locker room, you come into the building, you have that infectious personality. That stuff sometimes goes a long way, where there's that funky air going on around the locker room, and you need somebody to lighten things up. That Jared McCain is going to be one of those guys, and it may not at game 56 when you're like, all right, kid, take it easy. But I think some of the trips down to Delaware and then him coming back, you might feel that in the locker room. So those high fives, even coming to the bench, the towel waving, might go a long way.
Yeah, and I look, I think he's going to spend most of, certainly of 2024 in
we might
League.
be making some trips to Delaware looking at some games.
I don't expect much from him early on.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you another one. Let's go to Andre Drummond. 1% better. Just 1%, Andre Drummond.
And look, he's another one, 31. Like, he's not all of a sudden going to, turn into Bam defensively.
Right.
Nobody's expecting that.
Right.
So the improvement, like, I'm tempering that with expectations. Just a couple fewer crazy passes. I love him. I
love the behind-the-back passes, man.
It's so fun to watch.
I love it.
But as a role-playing big man who's not really a threat to score, you cannot be turning the ball over. And it's not like his turnover rate's terrible, but there's not so many, because I don't want to overstate it. There were a significant amount that were preventable the last time he was here. Just calm down a little bit on that. That's all. Otherwise, do what you do. Because I think for the most part, everyone knows his weaknesses. Everyone knows his limitations. You're not going to ask him to be Joel Embiid defensively. He just doesn't get off the floor quick enough to do that, to protect the rim. He's not going to defend in space. He's not going to change that. He's not all of a sudden going to become a great, jump shooter and floor spacer. That would be too much to ask. Just cut down a little bit on some of the crazy turnovers.
Because of that, 1% better on those push shots that We've seen him make. Not only with the Sixers, but Detroit in the past, when, of course, he was more of an offensive of a player
and
of importance
obviously
for
making
them.
Free throws would be great, too.
That would be nice.
Again, he's played 12 seasons or whatever.
He is he is there. Yeah,
look, would I love for him to be a 70% three-point shooter, free throw shooter? Yes, but he's never been that.
That's why push shots for me, man. Push shots. So Eden the Remix says he improved on offense in Chicago a little bit. Philly will be surprised, especially playing and learning from Embiid in practice. He knows how it's done. He knows what needs to be done. So push shots for me there, and that right there, intermediate 12-foot bang. Just take that push shot that I've seen him make. That would be good for me.
But if I'm like pinpointing a stat, he's got for his career a negative assist turnover ratio. He's got more turnovers than assists. That's got to flip.
Those whip behind the back pass.
Well, for a guy
to the 3-point line,
for a guy who really doesn't
out
pass,
of bounds.
He's got 1.2 assists per game for his career.
Love it.
He's had seasons where he has pushed 4 turnovers per night. It's just cut that down.
Right. Who you got for me?
Let's see. Who do we have?
1% better.
That's a good question. Like,
I can't wait to get him on the show, by the way, because if we get him on the show, I'm going to ask him.
I'm sure he's a good
What's
dude.
going on in your mind there when you make that pass behind the back?
Walk me through everything you were thinking about in this play.
And let me show you the video.
Let's see. I mean, is there anything to really talk about with Kyle Lowry?
No.
There's really not. My best way to improve Kyle Lowry is from Nick Nurse. Just don't play him as much.
Don't play him as much.
Yeah, he cannot be playing 20.
He's going to play. We know who he is. He knows who he is now. Presumably knows that he's not going to start. So he knows his role. So it's cool.
I'm not even sure. And we're 54 minutes into it. So we need a couple players here that we can cross off the list. I'm not sure anyone's expecting any improvement from Kyle Lowry. Just don't play as much.
Or Reggie Jackson, really, for that matter, because they are who they are.
So I guess we'll probably close this. Well, Gershon, which I feel like we've talked about a lot.
We've talked a lot about him on his 1% better since we haven't
he's probably the most talked about 14th player in the league right now.
I want to see who he is 1% better. No, 10% better from the player he was last time in the Boston Celtics uniform.
Yeah.
Not the French Yabusele. If that's the player, that's fantastic. I want to see him in an NBA environment where he is so much better. The first thing is his body. His body, when he was with the Boston Celtics, is partially why he was not in the NBA for 5 seasons.
Yep.
So if 5 to 7 seasons or whatever it is, he's been out for a long time. So his body coming into this situation here And when we saw his introduction, you were there. So you have a much better idea of what he looks like in person. I want to see him coming into camp in much better shape than the last time we saw him a few years ago.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think based on what we saw in the Olympics, I expect that to be the case. Well, at the Olympics, he looked okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not at his. I thought
you were there.
I was remote. I was remote on that
watching the press conference.
Looked fine on Zoom.
Camera does have some downs, so if he looks good, that's pretty good.
Oh, trust me, I've been living that nightmare for a year. I know. Yeah, and it's just translating that shot. Like he's got to get used to that deeper 3-point line. He is sort of like McCain. We brought this up, but McCain I saw shoot a decent amount of deep shots in college. I do think he will eventually get there, probably pretty quickly. Yabusele was a little bit of a, he hugged the 3-point line a little bit. So you'd like to, that's going to be a question that he needs to answer early on.
All right. So I'll add to that and just say putting the ball on the floor and getting to the basket.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that 1% better for Yabusele, because if he does and that shot translates and he starts to make shots, the closeouts, being smart in the closeouts, putting the ball on the floor, and a collapsing and making sure you attack the basket under control and finishing at the rim. So I would say that for Yabusele.
All right. Last one here to close it out. Adem Bona.
That's where I was going to go for you. So I would say for him is just to make sure, squeeze the pill, man. Squeeze the pill.
No,
get the rebound.
Improving his hands would be great.
Improving the hands, whether it's on the rebounds, but most certainly on the passes, because the ones that you're going to get as a receiver of the pass are 3 feet in from whomever is dropping that ball off to you. Squeeze the pill and finish with the dunk or a double clutch layup, of course, where you're able to finish at the basket. So I would say for Adem Bona, 1% better in the NBA, which needs to be better from his college days with the motor and the energy and all that stuff that he is going to do when you receive a basketball from your teammate. Squeeze the pill, Adem. Squeeze the pill.
So I'm going to say I want to see him cut down on the fouls, but not because I care about the fouls. And especially, I don't want to see him cut down on fouling because he's being less aggressive. But you saw it a lot early on in big men career where they come out and they foul a lot. And it's not really because of aggressiveness. It's in part because they're slow in decision-making. Like there's so much, when you're that back line defense, there's so much that you have to process that if you are a step slow, a lot of times that leads to fouls. So I'm 100% okay if he fouls because he's being aggressive. But what I want to see, and I think it's probably going to be it is probably the one legitimate 1% better every day. He's going to come in. It's going to be a little bit overwhelming for him. He's going to look lost at times, not because he's not a great defender. He was in college, but there's a huge adjustment for young big men in the NBA. I want to see him throughout the course of the year get 1% better at processing what's happening in front of him, being able to communicate what's happening in front of him so the rest of the team can react to it. And that eventually, as that progresses, will get better at cutting down the fouls.
His first game, he's going to have 5 fouls.
In like 13 minutes.
Yes, he will. And it's going to be so fun to talk about. Yeah. One more, quickly. Nick Nurse, 1% better. Quickly.
Man, when a guy's 37, don't play him for 35 minutes. That's what I want to see Nick Nurse get
done
better.
And done. Done and done. We thank everybody, of course, as always, for watching. It's time for our world-famous roll call.
All right, so I guess we will start off here. PHLY, Eden the remix, someone that nice to see you.
Good
Ethan
to see you.
Pano, Gavini, Winona.
What up? Hey,
appreciate you as always. Bootzilla,
Boots,
Martian, PHLY.
What up, y'all?
Who else do we got here?
What up, PHLY?
Val was in here.
Val.
I know I saw Val earlier. I'm going to give Jess a shout out, even though I'm not sure if I saw Jess.
I didn't see Jess, but hey, Jess.
You deserve a shout out. Hope you're feeling
big
better.
game tonight.
Jay in there. Jay's is
what up, Jay?
Malcolm Carrington.
Malk.
Let me see here. I always should have written down throughout the course of the show.
You got so many in there. We already said Money Mar. We mentioned
so many people arguing.
Connor's in there. We saw Connor.
I think, there is a Connor. There's a Devon Givens in there. I hate giving him a shout out, but you got to do it every now and then.
What up, Kyle Newbeck? Make sure you go like and subscribe to the show. Who else?
Did we say Winona? We said Winona.
We said Nona.
Right?
Yeah, we said Nona from the top. Everybody have a great one. Make sure you like and subscribe, become a diehard, and you get this.
Thank you, Bree. Happy anniversary, everybody.
Vu Drew. I don't think I've seen Vu Drew before. Appreciate you, Nero.
We all silly like the mayor.